You've noticed that a father who attends your outreach program from time to time with his 2-year-old daughter has been looking more and more disturbed. One morning when you say you're glad to see him, he swears at you violently. Another parent overhears his outburst and takes you aside to tell you his partner has recently disappeared and left him with the little girl and 2 older children.
The one where the father was swearing, and then another parent pulls you aside to let you know that the father's been left and is now on his own, and so obviously he's going to be quite upset. We found that at first people started sharing, because this has happened in some of the centers, that adult has sworn at some people or just talked about more just about problem solving around the crisis that some of these families come to the centers with. So I guess the thing to do is just, we have to recognize that he is upset, so we need to have empathy, because there's obviously a reason, especially if you know this over time, right? And while it's not appropriate for that kind of language, somehow we need to give him the opportunity to share with you, or without with also getting the message across to the other families that language isn't really appropriate, especially with other young children who are around, right? So some things about give him a moment. Maybe he needs just a moment to go for a walk. If there is somebody that has shared that with you, maybe they could go for a walk with him or something like that. Obviously he needs somebody to talk to, right? He needs some supports in place. So while it isn't appropriate, we said people are coming to us in crisis. Some of the centers have lots of people that are coming to their centers that have lots of crises in their home. Got lots of conversations about children arriving without even their shoes on, and some with no food in the house, and parents not able to cope for making breakfast, so they're going through drive-thrus because they're having, so there's lots of situations. So what could we do in our Strong Start centers to support people? What supports do we have already in place? Lots of questions about having visitors to the Strong Start centers, but also because the Strong Start centers are in schools, who's there in the school that could be supporting the Strong Start facilitators? Like, who's there to help them? Because especially if you notice that it's ongoing, something needs to help. And the other hard part in this is because the person hasn't disclosed to you that that this has happened, it's somebody else that's disclosed it. So how can, and I guess having a desk in and giving that option. So is that okay with you? Did I miss anything?
Thank you. Any comments on this one? Okay.
I think the part, Diane, about the way we said about knowing who else could help, like looking for other resources, other support. You had mentioned before, accessing the counsellors from the school, knowing who your community resources are, who's available, because as you say, the fact that this dad is there is, a really good thing. It's a really positive piece that despite this crisis, he's showing up with his child. So how can supports be in place? So again, that idea of who else is in the community
Absolutely.
to support.
Yeah. One of the things that you will experience, and you probably already have, is when you work with people, you're going to come across people who have mental health issues. And so when something like this occurs, you also want to have that kind of in the back of your mind. You want to be kind of filtering some things there, because you could be dealing with somebody who's got a serious mental health issue. And then you're looking at safety concerns for the children, right? So, you can usually determine that through the conversation or how you engage that person. But if you're not thinking along those lines, there's certainly, having worked in the school system and worked with parents, there's certainly a number of people that have fairly serious concerns that come to your attention. And the other thing, like Fiona was saying, really build a resource team for yourself. You're in schools. If possible, get to know the school counselor. Get to know people that you value, not necessarily people by the role that they're in, but the people that you value. And in your community as well. Develop a relationship with the public health, somebody from the ministry for children and families. Get to know one or two of the people who you value, that you can use as resource people. Because if you could put a face to a name when you have to phone somebody, it makes a huge difference. If they know you, you're going to get a much quicker and more favorable response. Yes?
Part of the issue ends up being response time, and because we have people, they show up randomly, so we have no idea which day. And it's not like a regular daycare setting where you can come by and observe this family, or support this family on a certain day or time. It's so different, and that's been the huge challenge, I think, in a lot of centers, that we're sometimes set up with outreach workers, but it's on a certain day at a certain time, so unless we happen to stars align and it works, it's a tricky thing to work out. So you do the best you can, but there's lots of pieces that are hard to put together.
It's very tricky. And remember, not that hopefully you'll have to do this, but if you find yourself in a situation where somebody becomes threatening, you do have 911. And sometimes you do have to use it. That is a reality. Not very often, thankfully, but it is a reality. So you also, you've got this job of kind of trying to monitor, and also you're gauging safety issues for other people and for kids as well. Before I leave that, I just want to say, public health is, I'm probably saying things that a lot of you know, but it's not as threatening for people. If you have to bring somebody in, if you have concerns about families, ministry is very threatening to a lot of people, particularly people from other cultures. And if you have some concerns, it's incumbent on you to respond to them. But public health is really helpful sometimes in that way. And they go into people's homes and they're not as intrusive, and it's not quite as scary and threatening to people. So keep that in mind and get to know at least one public health nurse that you can communicate with. Any other? Yes?
I was just concerned, I haven't had that person swear. Would you then, I'm sorry, when we were talking about it, would it just to ignore a little bit? Or, I'm just thinking how other parents would feel, or how insecure people would feel if this person just then went to play with their child off it. I'm not sure that I would feel, I know the long-term solution is to the support and understanding, but in that moment and in that day.
Yeah. Well, if you're asking me personally, no, I wouldn't ignore it. And what I would try to do in a situation like that, and this is why it's really important to develop some key people, a little core group that you can rely on, and try and separate this dad so that you can have a conversation with them, and you're not having it in front of the whole group. Because again, it's, saving face is huge. And if people feel embarrassed, or, then it just adds to the reaction that you get. So if at all possible, I would try to isolate him and have a conversation with him and let him know, for me, that would be a boundary. It's not okay to come in and swear at me in front of all the people and the kids. It's not all right to do that. But, you can also acknowledge a person's really upset and they've got some issues, and you're there to be helpful. But you're right. I think you can't let that go, because you're also having to think about all the other people that are starting to feel unsafe in a situation like that. Yes?